5th of December 2006, and for me it was like any other normal work day. I turned up to work at 7 in the morning. We were working on a large construction site in Melbourne. We were installing new water mains, and my particular role was to hop down in the trench once the trench had been excavated. So we'd normally excavate about 2 metres deep and about 20 to 30 metres long per day, and then we'd install the new water main into the ground. But on this particular day, as I proceeded to hop down in the trench, the excavator operator has seen something that completely wasn't level in the trench, and he's thought, I'm going to quickly accelerate and dig that out so Jack doesn't have to do that by hand. So at the exact same moment when I walked around the truck, the excavator operator had accelerated, and before I knew it, I had a 14-ton excavator knock me to the ground. It had crushed my right leg all the way up to my knee joint, and had started to crush my left foot as well. So as you can imagine, once 14 tonne worth of machinery hits your leg, it's going to be pretty unforgiving. So I then stayed conscious throughout the whole ordeal. It only took about 5 minutes for the ambulance to come, but once the pain had set in at that stage, it was completely unbearable. There was actually a nurse walking by, and she was working, in the CBD in Melbourne there, and she identified how much blood I'd actually lost. So she tore my belt off from my work pants, and she wrapped it around my thigh just to act as a tourniquet, so I wasn't actually going to die from the amount of blood loss. But then I was rushed to the Royal Melbourne Hospital, where I was heavily sedated, and I woke up the next morning with my immediate family there and about 5 doctors standing around my bedside. And the doctors explained to me there was about a 5% chance they were going to be able to save my leg. But in doing so, if they did save the leg was never going to be fully functional again, so I'd never be able to run again. I wasn't going to be able to walk with a normal gait. I wasn't going to be able to play competitive sports and just, have the mobility I once had. The decision was made the next day on the 6th of the 12th, 2006 to amputate my leg below the knee. And yeah, from that moment on, it was obviously a journey of, I suppose, frustration and, misery too. But working with Gallagher Bassett case managers through my rehabilitation phase, really, I suppose it helped me not to worry about things outside of my control, and organising occupational therapists and physiotherapists to get me back through my rehabilitation.
Great Jack! Great Jack! It was all very new to us. We didn't really have anyone in our lives with a disability. We didn't know what the next step was, what prosthetics even were, how it worked, how it would affect our life. So there were a lot of questions that I had.
Working with case managers, it just enabled me to focus on my own rehabilitation. So early on I was wheelchair bound and completely bed bound, so I didn't really have any independence, I didn't have any mobility. So I had that to worry about to start with. I had, my physiotherapy to go through and whatnot. So I can only imagine if I had to deal with other things like trying to organise return to work schemes, trying to organise prosthetists to make my prosthetic legs. I can only imagine how hard that would have been. So working with case managers, gave me that peace of mind that I didn't have to worry about those certain issues. The biggest thing is constant communication. So as long as you keep that communication, whether it just be little things, checking up on where they're at with their rehabilitation phase or return to work phase, as long as that communication's there and it's not broken, then I suppose the path to rehabilitation and returning to work is always there. But if you don't have that communication, it's hard either from the case manager's perspective and the injured worker as to where they're at certain stages. I suppose personal level and what motivates them, then they can put the procedures in place to then allow them to return to work and allow them to return to everyday life. It wouldn't matter if I had, the best case manager in the world. If I didn't want to get back to work, if I wanted to keep sitting on the couch at home and feeling sorry for myself, that's what I would have ended up doing. But it needs to come from within, and you need to say to yourself, I want to get back to doing everything I did before I had my workplace accident or whatever it may be. So that's what I said, and that allowed me to keep progressing, and it gets to a point where it can start to open doors that you never even imagined. My goal at this stage, and pretty much since I started the sport of triathlon, was to be the fastest leg amputee in the sport. Currently, I'm the highest ranked leg amputee, and we'll see on Friday morning who's the fastest. Just through means of encouragement and being positive, and explaining that you can do this, you can do that, and also highlighting, I suppose, the disadvantages of not returning to work. I think the biggest positive for me returning to work, it wasn't the financial side of it. It was being able to get out of the house. It was to stop feeling sorry for myself, and it was the mental health benefits of being able to socially interact with others again, especially after being through rehabilitation for the last year. So yeah, as long as that encouragement and I suppose any evidence on previous cases of how people have returned to work, if that can, I suppose, be portrayed to the injured worker, then I think that can help.